Jerry, thanks for coming to the Thinklyn campus here in Boston.
It's a beautiful campus,
yeah.
and I love the fact that I'm here on a Friday, and tomorrow is college football day. And one of the companies that you're running there, big day, a big game.
Yeah, big game.
Tomorrow. You're on the road, right?
On the road to Virginia, and BCFF will be covering that game tomorrow live. And yeah, again, one of our great brands that we've developed in the incubator the last 3 years, and it's incredible what you can do in 3 years. You know, with a startup where we've gotten to the point now where we've actually spun off partnerships and other businesses that have been able to monetize off of this community that we built with bcfootballfans.com. And once you build a community, you can do a lot with it, whether it's, we have a merch line out now, we have podcasts, so we're putting out a lot of content. And speaking of that content, what's been incredible in producing that as the GCC, the Global Creative Center, which we also just launched here at Demo, Boston 24, here at Thinklyn. And with partnership with SKJ Juris, this global capability center concept and product offering that they have is a game changer.
One of the things that we kind of like to do, we're really kind of OG when it comes to building companies and sustainability that's on there. It's not that we haven't had failures over the years. We have. They've always been pretty instructive to us, that's on there. One of the things I find very encouraging when I look at this recent group of young entrepreneurs we have in our incubator is the recognition, and perhaps it's just the area you grew up in the importance of community branding. So you take a brand, you build a community around that. One thing, you don't have to be a sports fan. Case studies. Entrepreneurs must look for case studies. You get a hunch, you got a business idea, you got to study, you got to do the research. If you don't want to do that, then get yourself a co-founder, somebody who, if you're the guy who comes with the ideas and you got the pizzazz and you got the way to represent and present, then look for a co-founder. And there's many ways to get a co-founder, which that will be a topic, I guess, for another show that's on there. But what I like about sports products, it's part of the sports and entertainment business sector. That's a sector that tends to be recession-proof. People still want to be entertained, especially when things are going rough. But I look at a couple of examples. So you mentioned that we started our very first boot camp post-COVID. That was in Canada, 2021, and the purpose of that was to get us into a boot camp environment. We took up some selected members of the boot camp, and that you came along on that one, and that was the start of really the first product line that you had, because you mentioned you had an fan account and an X account, a Twitter account, whatever you want to call it, and then that was then the creation of Thinklyn, which happened right before that. Originally started out down in New York City, and that's a great story in and of itself of resilience. While you were in New York City is one of the most expensive rental places in the world, but it also has great infrastructure, right?
Incredible.
So one of the things they have is a public library system, and I really can't emphasize to you enough for our entrepreneurs out there of how valuable that, because that in fact was your office.
That was my original office. So when I first launched Thinklyn, before it even was Thinklyn, I got my first client in Manhattan. That's what brought me to New York. And my office was the public library because, like you said, the city of New York has incredible resources and public free resources. And right at the public library, you have incredible spaces, technology, incredible resources and people to help you out, really, whether it's to start your own business, whether it's to gain clients. I mean, that these buildings and spaces are readily available for you. So for young entrepreneurs saying, oh, it's too expensive, or there's not opportunities out there, there's these incredible opportunities for people, solopreneurs, entrepreneurs that are trying to bootstrap their way up into, starting their own startup.
And bootstrapping is a real important and a disciplined approach to raising money. See, the value that you have is when you came into our incubator, you had full control over the company. You had full control over the business plan, the goals of the company, and where the build out potential was. And the idea is that the way digital developers is that they really truly are going to be at the epicenter of the way companies do content marketing that are on there. You see stodgy medical practices have doctors explaining on podcasts certain things and what they really you saw the advent from COVID of digital medicine, where you have doctors who will conduct an investigation of whatever your complaints are, preliminarily speaking. And what do? They use companies like Thinklyn to go out and to market them, because the truth is the doctors could be sitting anywhere in the world that's on there, and they're the first line when people, you don't feel like traipsing off to the emergency room. Let me just see if I can get some sort of input. It's your first line of thought there. But what do they do? How do they compete? How does that get in there? It's digital developers, So it was a very bright component to it. And then what you also had is the vision. We saw the vision in there that you said, hey, look, digital development and digital products are going to be across varied industries. Now, what we like about the sports and the entertainment sector is that it drives home the importance of building out a community around the brand. So you got, let's just say I got this nice cup of coffee here that's on there. How do I build a community around that? Well, one of the things you did masterfully is because remember in that boot camp that we had up in Quebec, and we picked that because we had a host. Yeah. It's all about not having a cash burn. So we had a host in Madu Sante, which is a wellness company, and we were able to use their facilities, their lovely facilities in Saint Foy, which is a magnificent bucolic suburb outside of Quebec City. And we remember the day that you transfer out of the Thinklyn business model, this BCFF, and now how many followers do you have?
We have over 30,000 followers across our socials. I think that raised significantly over the last couple of months. And like you were saying, Jerry, I mean, when you're trying to sell products, I mean, you got to build that community, and sometimes your focus in marketing sales has nothing to do with that product. I've seen great success stories out there, even using TikTok, where you're building a community about something that hasn't, might be in the space of your product. Say it is coffee, and you make a lot of content surrounded about coffee drinkers or the work grind and things of that nature. You focus on content that's going to help tell a story and grow a brand and grow a community. And then the product's afterthought, and that's how you kind of are able to sell. And we've seen that firsthand with BCFF, where the first couple of years we really focused on just growing the community, being leaders in that space, and really owning that niche space, which I think is super important when you're building community. You got to find that niche area where in sports it's usually your fan, a certain team of choice, or a certain type of content that is desired in that space. And if you're able to output that, and create very engaging content, that's where you're then able to bring in products like a podcast or merchandise to then eventually monetize. But your focus should never be on that first, or the making money and the selling the product first. It really should be building that community. And another great example of this is, Madhu Sante, with what she's been, that incredible founder in Canada, has been able to do with her company, and it's community focused, and instead of focusing on her incredible health and wellness, suite, which is very incredible, she makes really nice dancing videos, and that's a great way to get people active and get to grow a community. And then in there comes that positivity from the brand and your ability to then potentially sell a product or your services. So that's a big aspect, and it all comes through very strategic partnerships and content, with a focus on community.
Yeah, and Medisante is a great example. She basically is the forefront of the founders, the forefront of wellness choreography. So when you've had people who've had years of a sedentary lifestyle, or they're elderly and they've had an active lifestyle, but they need to sort of recognize that they're going to still have to stay active and physically engaged, but it's not going to be like jogging, 20 miles. So wellness choreography is an emerging product line within the wellness sector, and she's mastered that. And her community that she's built on TikTok is really tied into that. And so she'll get a many time when she has posted a car, and she spends the whole week. So she posts once a week, and spends the whole week in designing the choreography that's on there, which is geared towards. It's really geared towards people who are starting into the need to exercise or maintaining it, because what sometimes the dances are for people who are already fairly active, and other times they're not. And the community is wrapped around that need. See, that's a driving force that brings a community together. So you'll see she gets a lot of duets where somebody in her community will say, "Hey, I like that dance, so I'm going to duet that dance." That's on it, and that's a classic community build out. But community build outs can also be when a brand loses sight of itself. It's something that happens. You take a very old sport, an old or a more mature sport product as the FAI Premier League in Ireland. Now, the Premier League in England is been attributed to be such a popular league that when the games are put on the cable television in African nations or in Ireland, the local leagues suffer from attendance wise. Certain countries in varied East African markets were able to sustain the peeling off of supporters and attendance at their games. Others, like the Ghanaian Premier League, are suffering from that because people are staying home watching the English Premier League versus going to the domestic league. In the FAI, they sort of lost touch with the community. They sort of presented, hey, this always worked in the past. And they also were competing against the English Premier League. So what they decided to do, which was considered sacrilegious at the time, was that they were going to turn themselves into a summer league. Now, most of the Asian leagues are summer leagues, like the Japanese league, the J League, the K League, they're summer leagues. And that's for soccer fans. There's a community that's been built around that out of, hey, I can't wait for late August and early September for the season to start. So after the championships leagues happen in Europe, that's on there. A lot of hardcore soccer fans will gravitate towards the K League and the J League. What the FAI Premier League said is, look, we have we're in a situation where we are losing the fan base. We're putting games on at Saturdays and Sundays when the Premier League is on. We can't compete against that, and we just have to recognize that we can't compete against that. Ireland's also sort of a unique position for a European and North American country in that they have a growth in their they have a high birth rate and have a higher than North America or most of Europe. So there's a lot of young families that are in this. So what they decided to do was rebrand the Premier League, the FAI Premier League, turn it into a summer game, and then make it a summer night out. So now it's the summer, the kids are out of school. They focused in around young families,
Smart.
but also the ultras, the soccer guys there, so that there would be like a concert, or there might be a pizza night or something like that. And now you're looking at now 10 years on, a little more than 10 years on, they have record-breaking crowds at their games, and it's a summer thing to do, is to go out, and I've done it myself. I follow Shelburne FC. If I was over there in the summertime and we had, a holdover where our business meetings were going on to Monday, I'd always would go out to Atoka Park where Shelburne played. And I noticed the interface with the kids, the local soccer teams would play beforehand. That was out there. They were there with the professional leagues, and then the parade of the youth when your teams come out. So these were all very, and they got very involved in the youth. Now the youth and the community to which they're in. So in this particular case, their niche was the northern section of Dublin that's on there. In addition, they cross-marketed with under the FAI with the derbies, which is the local competition between the two. When you look at their elevation of their attendance, that's up, and how it's growing at double-digit figures. That's where you use community develop, go back to the people, go back to the fan base, give the fan base what they want, much like what you guys do in BCFF. And even if you're in the doldrums, if you go back to that and go into the community, and I don't want to use the word rebrand, but establish your brand the way it was supposed to be, where now the community is supporting you. That's a case study that if you're selling coffee, if you're doing a podcast on politics, if that's what you like, you're going to have communities that are going to be naturally attracted to it. I think the challenges that you have, because it doesn't change the fact that you got to build out a community on there. So one of the things that you're doing for a client right now, an East African renewable energy developer, is all about building a community around young people who are feeling that the establishment is not really vested into global climate change, because I got mine mentalities in there. Oil and gas puts money in my pocket. We don't want to pay extra money for our weekly or monthly energy costs. And as far as you guys figure it out later, because by the time that big tidal wave comes, we'll be off the face of the earth. Having said that, what you do have is an extraordinarily young population. The largest Gen Z and millennial population is across the African continent. And they're also feeling the brunt of extreme climate change with desertification of arable land. So what you guys are doing at Thinklyn for Arc Power is something that maybe you might want to share with the followers out there, or young followers, or entrepreneurs at the MGSN network, which is very graciously hosting this both on their X account and on the website, and also some of the podcasts are going to be hosted on their YouTube channel.
So I'll say a few things. I think that when you're building that community, there's a twofold way of doing it. One, I think is the niche market where you're trying to target a certain audience, and you can really own that target niche audience, but also like to diversify, like you were talking about, the Premier League in Ireland, how, when you're thinking about the fan experience, they're trying to diversify that fan experience to kind of to pull into multiples, instead of it just being strictly a hooligan or a hardcore fan, to get into the families and to be able to bring kids to that. That's why it's one of those things where actually you see that kind of mirrored in even in Boston College, the athletic department there, wanting to diversify that and give fans more of an experience, because it's with their potential renovations for the stadium, they want to make it a little more accessible for older folks, and or for also more accessible and comfortable for the donor class, which is a big deal when it comes to NIL and trying to get funds for the football program. So there's one way of doing that. But then I think when you bring up Arc Power, that's one that there's so much potential in, because especially the younger generations, are looking to a solution for climate change. And there's a massive amount of communities out there and activists. And I think what it comes down to, well, our strategy with Arc Power is strategic partnerships and trying to create some content that really engage, with that younger generation, and hopefully, everyone, because that message where I think everyone's kind of upset, we haven't done enough. And I think a lot of people from my generation and the younger generations are just fed up with the talk, and the organizations talking. They want to see action. And the great thing about Arc Power is that they're a solution that's actually putting in the hard work and actually solving a lot of these issues. They're actually bringing renewable, clean, affordable energy to the rural parts of Africa, which, by the way, has millions and millions of people that don't even have access to energy. So they're giving them not only the sustainable energy, they're giving them a potential, way to sustainably lift up their community, and even you start new businesses, getting access to internet and energy for the first time. So these are things that are super, super important as more of the world gets developed. And also we need to do it in a very sustainable way with climate change in mind. So the company Arc Power is incredible. I am super privileged to be able to work with them and represent them. And I just would like to say, for anyone who wants to follow them, you go to arcpower.co. They're an incredible company, and we're trying to build that community. So anyone, please follow along, come along to enjoy that this solution is there, and it's being done by startups like Arc Power.
And what I like, and this is where your experience in building out the community fan-based sports media that's been so successful. In 3 years, you got 30,000 followers, you got a monetization, you've got derivative businesses within that, you have a shop for merchandise, which is only just going to grow. That's on there, and you got a dynamic podcast. I listen to a lot of podcasts for two reasons. A, I'm a sports fan. B, I always like to see how you're taking in a competitive space and moving ahead of the class, which is what you guys are doing. I also like when there's an established community, which they had in Ireland. And now keep in mind that in Ireland, soccer is a third sport. It's hurling and Irish football, and that was what everyone was considered a poor decision on the part of the Football Association of Ireland, saying, wait a minute, you're going to go right smack in the middle of the hurling and the football inter-county season. How are you going to compete with that sporting group? And how they did it was real simple, was that they tied into the schools that had soccer program enrollees, and they concentrated on gearing up what they wanted. So they all saw that these were young fans, young families rather, that they knew that they had a base that they could work with. And the goal was not to create a displacement of an existing fan base. So you do have the ultras that who add the color to the game, but they also are mindful of the fact that you got young children there, you got young families there, and then of course if there's any that you put in entertainment with local musicians, not glamorous rock stars, who put on good shows before or after the game. And of course, right around is all the pubs that they tie in afterwards, and so that all that ecosystem was harvested, much the way you guys did over at BCFF. And that's what's called a case study, folks. You want to look at And one of the product lines you're going to get to see, if you read BCFF, you're going to see that after each game, Mac writes an article, and it's fresh off the hot press, and it's what a football fan wants. They don't want sometimes what the established media does. They have to appeal to such a wide audience to cover their expenses and what have you. So you sort of get lost in what you're really looking for, especially if you're a fan-based of media that's on there. And what I found sort of encouraging was that you took the case studies that you did, because the first client, now, by the way, BCFF is now a client of Thinklyn. At the time, it was Thinklyn's main product line. That's just a mere 3 years ago. So you took the case studies that you developed on your own. That's called primary market intelligence. So there's two types of research that you do as an entrepreneur. Secondary market intelligence, that's scrubbing the internet, separating the non-helpful information from the helpful information, and that forms you the basis of now going out and doing what Mac did, the hard work of obtaining primary market intelligence. Primary market intelligence is intelligence that you gain by going into the marketplace, rolling up your sleeves, going through the muck and the mire, and then coming out with the pearl that's on there. And that's been very helpful in dealing with the state of affairs that Arc Power is in right now, where they're now ready for, after they've built the product, they did all the hard work, they got the governments on board, they got the villages that were going to be electrified on board. They worked out all the kinks. That's the development piece. They put all the strategic networks together. Yeah. They put all together the strategic partnerships. Those go hand in hand. Yep. A network and a partnership. And how and when you pull that trigger on that, there's no real hardcore formula. Only that you really need to build the partnerships, and then you build the networks. That's usually the rule of thumb, which they did. And then they went out and got financing, and that financing is what's called debt financing. And now they're ready for the community at large to embrace them. So that to me is those case studies that you developed by utilizing your SMI, your secondary market intelligence, melding that in with your primary market intelligence. And those case studies, that sounds like a lot of legalese and what have you, but it's real practical. That means that you're going to study the market, study who is, much like the example of the Irish Football League, who was diving into territory that was carved out by the two main sports. And how many sports fans are there? But then if you expand it out to the local, look what you're doing. You got the local musicians who are going to come in and provide some sort of thing. So that's going to bring in people there. You got the pubs who are going to get the benefit of it. So they're going to be into sponsorship of the local youth soccer teams. And by going into that community involvement, now this league, which was in deep trouble, is now a very vibrant league, again, through community development. You have community, you have a sales outlet that's on there. If you don't have a community and you're just, if I just say I don't have a community around my coffee, then I'm competing against so much coffee. How am I going to compete with them? Now, what if I have a story behind this coffee? What if this coffee goes to support the local arts? Now, I take you here we're in this beautiful campus of Thinklyn here on a beautiful autumn day. New England, colors of the trees are changing. I mean, this is, you get the exciting local football league, football club that is a university club, a college team that is getting ready to play, I wouldn't say one of the big, but certainly one of the biggest games in October they're going to be playing. And if they can keep that mojo going, that's going to be a story in and of itself. Here we are talking about this. So I say to myself, well, wait a minute. I noticed in this particular town that, there's all sorts of mom and pop shops and businesses and a quaint village town. And so I want to capture this this not just this town, right? So I want to be able to I want to capture that New England fall experience, and I'll come out with a flavor coffee, and I'll call it the New England colors, New England fall, autumn colors, whatever the thing is. And then I'm going to make sure that every time you buy a cup of coffee, then I'm going to support the bookstores. I'm going to support the businesses here. I'm going to support the schools. What is the next generation of the high school that you attended? What are they going to be confronted with? Well, Mac, we know what they're going to be confronted with. Data. Who's going to produce the data? Who's going to manage the data? Who's going to own the data? These are all issues that are exploding. So if I say I want to turn a town where students are going to say, well, gee, what is the traditional jobs? Are they still there? Well, no, they're not. But these emerging jobs are coming here. And so for every time you buy my cup of coffee, I'm going to help sponsor a data festival that those high school students can participate in, because normally those are expensive data festivals. You have this and that, but you have to have somebody who's going to go in there and say, look, we're going to generate the data here. We're going to generate data professionals here. So every time you buy my coffee, so now who's buying my coffee? I now have the school. I now have the town. I'm putting my time and energy into that. And that's how you start building a community around the brand. If that's successful, then I can take that out and I can go somewhere else with it and say, okay, well, if I go over to New York City, there's a gigantic housing crisis over there. And I know that's all over the world, but it's so pronounced in New York. And that what's happening is you're losing the young people who can't afford to buy housing there. And what you're having is a very contentious battles between renters and homeowners, and this is going all throughout the 5 boroughs of New York City. So one of the things they're looking for, there's not-for-profits that will help build housing, and they'll build housing that will not change the historic character of the neighborhood that's on there. They're not commercial developers. But when a commercial developer, a speculator, comes into these neighborhoods and say, we're going to build these big office towers, but it's really just gentrification all dressed up under the label of affordable housing. These not-for-profits come in and say, look, we'll build the housing too, but we won't make big glass towers. We're going to bring in affordable housing. We're going to let young people who can't buy a home in this neighborhood for the very first time in a generation. So now I have my coffee and I go into there and I say, look, I want to support this not-for-profit. Hey guys, they need money. They need fundraising. Every time you buy a cup of coffee from me, I'm going to give a portion of that over to this not-for-profit, so that when that housing crisis comes and you get a young family like yourself who's now looking, because you lived in some of those neighborhoods in New York City, you saw firsthand what gentrification was doing to it and how young people will be, so you were being pushed out of their first home market. There's a not-for-profit that's out there saying that we're going to do this, but now that I'm building a brand around my coffee saying, this is who I stand for. I stand for that young generation. I stand for affordable housing. I stand for teaching young students that this beautiful town in Cape Ann can be at the center point of data. That's called, what you just experienced right now, ladies and gentlemen, was a live session of concept generation and how an entrepreneur does concept generation and how they start developing a community. But what do you notice about that? A lot of hard work, huh?
And I think the bigger points that you just laid out, Jerry, I think strategic partnerships, there's good strategic partnerships. There's also bad strategic partnerships. And you've got to learn which ones make sense. It's not always black and white. And I think, you mentioned, that with the Premier League in Ireland, where, they pick the right strategic partnerships. And there's some competition out there where you can partner with to make your brand better and your business better. And there's some competition out there where you just have to work with to get around. Like a great example of this is the NFL, right? Every major league sports, league in the United States knows no one's competing with the NFL on Sunday. And I think this is one of my big criticisms of the WNBA last weekend. They tried to have the Caitlin Clark, which is an incredible young woman, first year in the WNBA. They had her big primetime game on the same Sunday as NFL, and no other league does that. MLB doesn't do that. NBA doesn't do that. NHL doesn't do that. College football certainly doesn't do that. They know that they can't compete with that. So that's one reason of where, that doesn't make sense. Now, the other point you're making where they actually moved it to another part of the year and then strategically partnered with other parts of the community, that's the way to build. And that you can see that whether that's a massive industry like sports industry, you also can see that with a small startup. The one big thing that we did with BCFF, with BCFootballFans.com, is we strategically partnered with another outlet, which is technically our competitor. And instead of competing in that niche space, we both came together, and now we are known as leaders in this Boston College football fan space. And by doing that, we've raised the level. We've grown the community significantly. We're growing together, and then we've been able to launch certain brands off of that, whether it's the merch, whether it's the weekly podcast. And so that's a great example of using strategic partnership in the right way and knowing, when you find a partner that you can trust, that it may even be a competitor, you got to suss out what makes sense for your startup. And I think if you do it the right way, there's so much value and growth in that area.
I couldn't agree with you more. And building out a strategic network, especially if you're a company like Thinklyn, is crucial. MGSN featured a two-part series on the GCC, and it was written in a form of a novel, so to speak. What it did is it was ripped from the headlines or inspired by true events, and it involved a young entrepreneurs who were coming from the middle part of the United States, I believe it was Wisconsin, who then came into New York City. And one of them wanted to get into the entertainment sector and had developed no plan B. The other one was in a med tech environment, and med tech is a big area of development in New York City, and wanted to develop her startup. But the first thing they were both confronted with was that their rents were extraordinarily high. So they had to go out to the borough of Staten Island where they could find a rent where they both had to work side jobs, bootstrapping. That was on there. And I guess the point that we're trying to make is one of them didn't make it, and one of them made it only because she was able to, at the last minute, leverage what her technology with a GCC over in India, and that allowed her to get what's called an MVP of her product line that was on there, and she was able to draft up a viable pitch deck that was on there because of the diversity of services that the GCC that she was lucky enough to land happened. But you have to understand one of the reasons New York is, everybody wants to be in New York. I mean, New York, Frank Sinatra, the song can go on and on and on. But the truth be told, it's expensive over there. It's a dog-eat-dog world. In the article that we have that was submitted or presented or published rather by MGSN Publishing, it was a very compelling article that was on there. And then if you sort of look at the bottom of the screen, you'll see the link to that article series. I urge you to get and read that because I'm not saying don't come to New York, but one of the things that I think is really important when you're a digital developer like Mac is and his company is, and they also have a sales component that's on there. They're very good at using the BDR and SDR model with account execs and using the technology to cull down leads and create sales cadences. But more importantly, and you're going to see later on, I believe MGS is going to put on a great show between a young entrepreneur who just started doing event-based marketing and a very experienced entrepreneur who has been doing event-based marketing. We think that's going to be really helpful for you guys out there. But look again at this link here to these articles. Read those articles. Remember, part of this is real part and parcel. Now, why this is important is Mac developed with his team, working with the lawyers in our firm, this expo that was just completed over in Europe, the Thinklyn demo Euro 2024, and it was so successful. We're now doing one in Asia. And they said, what are you guys doing that for? Why are you going over to Europe? Well, first off, the strategic networks that we picked out, or the sessions we did, I mean, we had a couple of the companies over there. We had three. Again, it was by invitation only to the companies that we're currently representing. And the idea was that we're going to revisit what some of the R&D did. There's a great interview with Madhu Sante, the founder of the Canadian company, on the banks of Galway. We hope that will be something that be helpful for you. And that's where a lot of the R&D was done in the Wellness Center, because she went to Ireland, which was really at the forefront of wellness services with both respect to food and on an institutional basis. The other aspect of that was that strategic networks right now for the development services that Thinklyn can offer, because there were some potential strong strategic networks that we initiated in France that was on there. And then, of course, what you're going to see, I believe, maybe it's next week on MGSN, where you're going to see what was promised to our followers in London, the meetings in London, where Thinklyn starting to do the content development pieces, the community that will be the cornerstones of community development for people who want to not just complain in a coffee shop about how life is unfair, but actually do something and help out this company and these projects and these ethical developers that are on there. Now, the reason I sort of bring this up, let's go back to that article. Again, I'm just going to, for the last time, make this pitch for you to read these two stories that are on there. Is that had they came to me, these two young entrepreneurs, one in the entertainment sector and one in the med tech sector, I said, there's a time and a place for New York, but it ain't now. It's not now. And they said, if you're willing to travel, and you're leaving from your small little town in Wisconsin, I think it was, maybe don't go to New York. Why don't you go to Santiago, Chile? Why? Santiago, Chile? Yeah, go to Santiago, Chile, because you see, you're going to get what's called, you're going to get an entrepreneur-based visa, digital nomad visa, you want to call it. You're going to get a year to develop, and you got a government-sponsored, it's a PP, private and public, called Startup Chile. That's on there. And what that does is it allows you to build your development in a cost-effective manner, where you're not going into debt. You're able to there are certainly grants that are there, particularly if you're a woman-based entrepreneur, which both of these young ladies were, and then you can think about that, and then you can also split your time up between that. And I am a gigantic believer in Indian-based GCCs. You'll be able to get a larger workday if you're working from wherever you establish your home base to be. Now, keep in mind, just like when you're going through an education process, and for those of you who had to work right out of high school, these programs are geared for you. You know, when Mac was telling you he got to New York City, you found it pretty expensive?
Yeah, it was very expensive. But again, if you know how to hustle, you know how to bootstrap, there's resources out there for you. But I mean, again, when I think it's expensive for any startup or any developer, digital developer out there. So like when we're bringing up the GCC, it's so important to strategically partner yourself up with a great global capability center. And we mentioned this with SKJ Juris. They just have been the most incredible partner, because for Thinklyn, which is a small agency, creative agency, for our clients, at the end of the day, it's what can you provide your clients, and being able to provide them with a global capability center, we've been able to diversify our suite of services at a lower cost and be able to scale those services. So again, I can't talk more highly of SKJ Juris and their global capability center product line, because we've been able to develop our own GCC, and we just launched it actually this week. It's globalcreativecenter.com, and you can see it's already a proof of concept. It's out there. It's in function right now. We literally take all of our creative content, specifically video editing. A lot of that, we export that completely to Pune, India, and then the turnaround time, the quality of the interviews. In fact, the interview right now that we're having, the GCC, the Global Creative Center, is going to edit that, in post-production and export it to us. And so that whole creative suite is now a huge offering. And as everyone knows, content is king. And it goes all the way back to, growing these community. How do you grow these communities? You do it through really high quality content and engaging content with a really good vision. And the GCC allows us to do that. And with partnership with SKJ Juris, we've been able to, really, really fine tune it. I mean, again, the more you put into it, the more you're going to get out of it. It's the same thing with the LPO. But the GCC is something that if you're a solopreneur, an entrepreneur, a small startup, willing to put in the work, willing to work, but you need more manpower. You need to scale. You only have a limited amount of resources. SKJ Juris is the ultimate advantage and the ultimate solution to those problems, to the ability to scale and get to more of the market.
So yeah, this is an important point Matt is following up on. Let's take these two young ladies that were in this article in New York City. Again, the medtech component that was being proposed certainly was going to take a tremendous amount of development work. To put together a pitch deck, she wrote one of the things she couldn't afford to go out and have bring in an expert to do her pitch deck. That's on there. So what saved her was that she was able to get a pitch deck that was done over in the UK, in India, that was on there. But here's the most important point. The pitch deck did really, really well, but having a company that's a digital developer here in the States. So if I was that young lady, I would have gone to Santiago, Chile, or I would have applied as a female entrepreneur to Stacionef. Now, Stacionef was one of the strategic networks that you're in the process of developing.
Yeah.
Can you maybe take some time out so I can put some color to this proposal that I'm doing from this article that was inspired by these true events? So during the expo, you took one of the goals, or the driving goal, was the build out, the development of Thinklyn, the development of a startup company, strategic partners, strategic networks. This is a strategic network. And Stacionef, we feature that on X free of charge. We don't charge any of our entrepreneurs, whether young, old, whatever you are. If you're looking to say, I want to get in and start my own business, well, this is a resource for you, MGSN. Can you tell us a little about what your experience was in Bessay, Paris, where Stacionef is?
Yeah, Stacionef, very similar to the Thinklyn campus we have here. Stacionef is maybe one of the greatest startup campuses I've seen, in the globe, in the world, I would say. It's an incredible area in France. And also, there's over 1,000 startups there. And the incredible thing is Thinklyn's always been a startup for startups. So we want to strategically partner ourselves with as many people in that space as we can to try and, gauge that space. I mean, we're in tech, we're in creative space, we're in marketing. These are things that are constantly moving, constantly changing. And the great thing about Stassi F is that they give you these resources. And I love their model where it's you only come in for a limited amount of time, and similar to the GCC, you get what you put into it. So you got to go in, you got to build those relationships, you got to strategically partner yourself, and then it gives you that boost to get more into the marketplace. And I think that's an incredible market that I saw there, along with an incredible physical campus as Stassi F. And for Thinklyn, it's been a great inspiration in our developments with our own partners and with our own clients, because it's one of those things where I'm a big believer in when you have a bunch of people that are building incredible things, you put them in the same building, you're going to create something even more beautiful and even greater. And at the end of the day, that's who we're trying to partner with, is people that are making a difference. They're putting positivity into the world. And you see a lot of these, startups, and especially in Stassi F, that are doing the hard work on the ground there, and you just want to be a part of it. It's very, very attractive. It's very, it's like a magnet type of place. You bring hardworking talent there, and diverse cultural talent to one building, and that's something that Thinklyn's very much about, and excited about that development.
So you take what Mac just laid out. He went and experienced his first time. What I would suggest, if you because obviously we just gone through the prolific short history of Thinklyn that's on there, and how they really now gotten out and said, look, we're getting out there to the world. It was such a successful expo. We're going to get a little into the next expo that Thinklyn is hosting. But these two young ladies that I mentioned in the story, perhaps instead of going to New York, had they gone to Startup Chile, and then from Startup Chile, that's the same sort of concept. You're going to get a certain period of time. Then they use that time to develop their product line and apply for a startup position on the campus of Stassi F. Again, now you're raising your cost your costs, but what's great about Stassi F is they do have entrepreneur housing, which is subsidized. They'll take care of the visa program if you qualify for that. So if you start up in Startup Chile, first of all, you're going to have the great experience, and you're going to build that opportunity to build in networks in crucial markets that are on there. Same if you get over to Stassi F. And the goal is you get yourself into an accelerator, either in New York. At that point in time, you come to New York because now you've got something that people want to be part of. And all during that time, you have companies like Mac who are building out your community around your brand, wherever that brand may be. It would have been nice to see that both of those young ladies would have survived, but they don't. Right. The truth be told, not having a plan B is really, really difficult to see how you're going to get past the fact that most startups fail. But most startups fail, and I've been in this business for 40 years. They fail because there's a lack of structure, and there's also a lack of being able to modulate your expectations. So the idea is you tell everybody, hey, I'm an entrepreneur, I got this startup. There's a certain amount of cachet that's associated with it. And when you're sitting in the coffee shop talking to your friends, or you're going to a party and you say, oh yeah, no, I have my own company. Oh yeah, your own company, wow. But then what happens is when you have your own company, that means you're next on the line. You got to pay rent, you got to balance the bills, you got to do this. Then clients are clients, so maybe they pay you, maybe they forget, maybe they get into trouble for a bit and they put you on the long finger. Then you got to figure out how am I going to finance this? Oh my gosh, I don't have really enough to go to the debt market, which is a good thing, because if you go to the debt market, you might obtain debt that you can't pay, number one. And then you're going to be in a serious problem, because usually there's a personal guarantee on that. If you go to the equity market, assuming that you had a product ready for equity market, you're going to lose control over that company. So now you're going to figure out, how do you bootstrap? How do you get a bootstrapping program? And the good news is, Mac's not just talking about a thing he read. I mean, you actively engage in bootstrapping.
You got to bootstrap, and you mentioned this, Jerry. You got to be resilient. I mean, most startups fail because everyone's got a great idea. Everyone's got these great business ideas, but it's about executing. But it's also about resiliency, because I think it's 100% chance that you're going to come up with a challenge in the marketplace. So you have your great idea, you start executing, and you come across a massive challenge or roadblock that you need to be able to solve. And if you're not resilient, you're not adaptable to that. If you're too stubborn, the market's going to take you out.
Yeah.
I think more times than not, people, especially people that you say don't have a plan B, if you're on plan A and you're stubborn about plan A, more times than not, you're going to fail on that stubborn and not being able to adapt. At Thinklyn, that's what we have our hands in, whether it's sports media, whether it's creative stream, whether it's the GCC, whether it's the hospitality industry. We're in so many different industries because at the end of the day, the market's going to tell us, and then we have the job as a startup to adapt with those brands, get those brands to adapt to the marketplace, and then be able to execute. And we need to give them all the tools, tech, and resources to be able to pull that off. And if I'm too stubborn and I say, oh no, I just have this one little business and I'm sticking to it, I mean, you're setting yourself up for failure. The way to set up for success is, you put your heart and soul into as many pieces as you can, and some are going to fail. That's the name of the game. But some are going to be successful, and then you lean into that. And I think one of the biggest successes, and we saw this recently with BCFF, is that which started as almost a side hustle, as a small part of Thinklyn, has now grown into this massive, 35K plus follower, massive community. It's starting to monetize, and we're starting to put more resources into that. And we're starting to get other partners like the GCC and SKJ Juris to start, help creating content to it. So it's about being able to adapt to the marketplace. If you're too stubborn, you're not going to make it through, and you've got to be able to adapt and be resilient to the market.
Yeah, it's a great point. One of the things that you do when you're in business is you're going to have bad days. You're going to have a lot of bad days that's on there. And the truth is, you don't get too excited if somebody says, oh, I had a great meeting, a magnificent meeting. Oh,
right.
Don't get too excited. Modulating your reaction to the day in, day out basis. It's sort of the key to it. Now, that's not to say you're not going to have days where you're going to have a bit of a meltdown and then like everything's going wrong. And then you get up to the ticket counter in the airport and you left your passport at home because you were too rushed to get out. So those days, and there's nothing you're going to do. Those are meltdown days. You're going to have them. That's just human nature. But the trick of the trade is not to let it dominate you. Just, finding a solution, finding a resolution. I spend, a lot of time with engineers. And one thing I love about engineers is they are problem solvers. They find, they almost, where lawyers are risk adverse and we don't want problems, we want to control the outcome on it. Engineers almost look like they look for problems. So it gives them, that's how that's the juice that they drink. That's on there. And you can learn a lot when you go into these expos that Mac puts on. I'm involved with consumers. Throughout this, there was a company that collaborated, which we love the way our local, our incubated companies like ARC and Thinklyn have been collaborating now, have a very good business relationship. Pillow and Tea was debuting. We had a partly controlled and partly opened testing of the market testing of the event-based marketing, which was rolled out at that point in time. And it gave us the opportunity to interface with the test group that was at that event-based marketing events. We had dinner with them. These are people we didn't know before.
Right.
And inspiration is always what you're looking for when you're interfacing in an environment like that. It's a real important component to it. So one of the things that started, just to show you some of the inspiration, is that we're very strong on concept generation. We're very strong on the science of it. we're very strong on the discipline of it. Now, how many times you go out there and I have a great idea for a business.
Yeah.
You said, okay, well, it's completely, is that a good idea? I mean, it sounds good to you. Did you do any sort of research? So the first thing you lose, are you addressing a social society need so that maybe you start up as an NGO or not-for-profit? Are you that needs to be addressed? Are you addressing a need that is a business need? Now, this, we represent a lot of NGOs.
Yeah.
One thing while we were in France, there was a church that Pillow and Tea identified for anybody who wanted to take some time out and visit this church. It was in the 16th arrondissement, and it which is a pretty nice section of the city, and they I guess all facilities, they say you can have a newsletter. You sign up for the newsletter, or you can take their handout, their bulletin. And one of the things they talked about was the fact that they had the diocese in Paris had started a product that they developed. It was called Hope Team. And what they were trying to do was to show, okay, there are certain aspects of obviously it's an organization that's experiencing significant contraction, particularly among young people. And they figure, well, wait a minute, now, we have a good story to tell here. Of course, there's a lot of bad news out there. So this is what attracts a lawyer like me, a turnaround. One of the practices we have is a turnaround. And what the Parisian parish diocese was doing was this turnaround, saying, look, there are going to be an older generation that is just not going to be interested in what we're offering. And there's going to be enough, but now there's this generation that's in Paris, and they sometimes they express themselves as losing hope. There's a hopeless situation that's out there. The climate conditions are changing, and that's hopeless. The wars are popping up like poppy seeds and poppy plants, and that's hopelessness. Their family structures are in some sort of stress, and there's a sense of hopelessness, and there's not a lot of jobs out there. There's not a real focus on what it's doing. So they started this thing called Hope Team, and that's a turnaround program where they're saying, look, you can look at what we are failings, and they're quite pronounced, or but you can also look at what we're really doing really well. That's on there, and we're tied into CR, which is a not-for-profit that almost 100% of their donations go towards community development in areas where most people would run away from. That's on there. So that's an example of how you can use, if you have a societal need, that's on there. And in this case, there is a gigantic societal need for community development in areas where there's no oil, there's nothing there for the speculators to build on, but there's still wonderful people living there. And that's a societal need. If that's what your inclination is, that you want to bring hope to young people, or you want to help young people, say, don't just look at what you're experiencing, get some positive development by getting involved in some of these community developments in places around the world that really need it. And that just might change your perspective of how hopelessness there is. That's a societal need. That's something. Is your business plan going to meet that societal need? Now let's look at a business need. Let's go on the other side of the coin. That's on there. So I'm going to go back to that story because I like the story of the two young ladies. What they needed was a digital developer. The problem is they had the young lady with the med tech had a device that probably could have attracted financing. Her pitch deck was awful because she did it herself. And that's like, how people want to paint their own house because they'll save some money, but you can tell they painted their own house. Very similar situation what this young lady did. And she couldn't raise a nickel. The minute that she went to digital developers, now the pitch deck was dynamic. and you'll get to see the effect on the entrepreneur. I believe there's going to be a report from London with respect to the pitch decks that you created for Arc Power.
Yeah.
And that's going to be broadcast sometime soon on the MGSN network. Look for it. It's real important because you're going to see the pitch decks have to be, it's not the old-fashioned pitch deck, which has a lot of text and a lot of figures and this, that, and the other thing. And then the other aspect of it is that community that is now sort of being developed. If this young lady had the ability to see the problem, not the problem, the attractive aspects of biotech and medtech is that they're trying to come up with a non-invasive means to sort of address some sort of ailment that's coming up. And there's a parameter of them. I mean, so in this particular case, it's irrelevant what it's for. It's just that you're going to have an inherent community that's on there. The example I give you is medical R&D every day gets a community built around them. Somebody gets a rare disease, a community develops around them, and then you're able to now say, okay, I want to engage this community. They have an inherent built-in aspect to it. So those are sort of the things that you're going to learn on these expos that we're having. Right now, they're development expos that are on there, and we believe that we are all closed out for participants. Again, it's invitation only for our incubator companies. Our goal was to put this out a little to the open for everybody. We did promise you, from the Expo 2024, that MGSN was going to host some of these podcasts, and we believe a podcast is coming out.
Yeah, we're launching now. Oh, it should be out by the time you guys see this. And we were able to film a lot of Demo 24 in Europe. And the nice thing about these expos, and you can go to Thinklyn.events to kind of find out a little bit more, is that they lay out this pathway that you've kind of laid out there, Jerry, of this business development pathway. It's a long pathway. It's a pathway that takes a lot of patience and grit. And you start out with concept generation, which I think is the most exciting, right? You have a problem or a challenge in the world, and you're trying to find a solution. And people are good at coming up with ideas. There's so many great ideas and business ideas out there, and you come up with a nice solution. But then it's about executing. And once you get into that business development pathway, it's not always an easy thing to execute. Everyone's got a great idea, like we talked about, but to be able to execute that and get the right digital developer to execute that, it's sometimes the most important thing, because an idea is not a business yet. And also, I'll say this, a product isn't a business yet. You know, you literally could go from concept generation to product. You're still not a business. There's another step. You have to have sales. You know, you have to be able to either get investors or bring that to the marketplace. And you need to have also a digital developer that gets you with the right marketing team and the right sales team to go to market. You're not a business yet if you have an idea or you're in concept generation. You're not a business yet, even if you have a product. We've seen this with engineers that have some of the best products, some of the best things that are going to solve the world. You can have again, and I always say this, you can have the best product in the world that's going to save the world, but if you don't have sales, no one's going to see it, no one's going to buy it. You're not going to solve anything with the best product in the world. You need to have the right digital developer and the right sales team to bring that to market. So it's a long pathway from concept generation, and that's what we kind of show, because we have a lot of brands and businesses and that are within this expo that we feature that are in different phases of this business development. Some in concept generation, some that have come out of that are in the digital development space, and some that are going to market and sales. And I think it's really important for startups and entrepreneurs to see that where you have to understand where you are. You know, you're really not a business yet, or you can call yourself a startup until you're really going to market. And it's very important who you strategically partner in, whether it's in concept generation or in digital development, to eventually become that business and to bring that solution to the world.
You know, it really is a great summation. One of the things that happens too is companies who are currently I mean, my law firm, I've been practicing law for 40 years. That's on there. There is, and our reputation has obviously been built in the OG way, right? So, trial lawyers are like baseball pitches. If you win, it doesn't matter, your wins, and because legal cases by definition attract interest, television shows, and what have you, and usually they involve the human dynamic at its most emotional state. Usually somebody's in deep trouble, or they're coming up with a solution, and now it's got to be protected. They're bringing movies to without no movie gets produced without lawyers on board to protect the intellectual capital that's on there. But so you get an established lawyer. Now, one of the things we loved about this conference on this wonderful fall weekend here on the campus is that a lawyer who's been in the business for a long time is looking to now create a product line that is going to enable him to reach out to lawyers and law firms in order to say, can you can achieve what I achieved, and here's the methodology that's on there. So that was the business goal that was articulated here. So right off the bat, Thinklyn, great concept generation team. Right off the bat, that went into an immediate concept generation that's on there. And we have, as Mac points out, a concept that has to be developed into a product. And that product has to have a means to the market. And that means to the market has to be able to make a sale to which that lawyer who's saying, well, gee, I think I will spend time doing this, because remember, that lawyer will be distracted. If somebody gets arrested and they say, hey, I need a good criminal defense attorney, well, he's going to be in a position to say, yeah, I'll take that. Or he's going to say, I'm sorry, I can't take it because I'm currently engaged in a product with Thinklyn. And that's what I think the point you're making is that whether you're an established company needing new product lines or new markets, it all starts right here in conferences like this. Or if it's if you're going to, and I believe you can get this on the Thinklyn site, you can arrange for a meeting where it's very nice to have these wonderful professionals that have been here to engage in concept generation. But that can all be initiated by you. If somebody goes onto your site and says, hey, I have to do some product development here, I have to do some service development here, I wish I could attend your conference, but it seems to be always booked out or closed out. Is there something that I could learn from what you guys did in the expo? And what are you guys going to be doing at expo in Asia? I'd love to be part of that, but if I can't be part of it, is there some way I can go to you the way ARC's gone to you, the way SKJ's gone to you, the way your campus here is your client in a way, So these are all things that maybe you can tell a little about some of the people out there who want to get this insight and this development piece and access to the networks that you worked so hard to develop over these last 3 years. Can you explain a little how that would work if somebody's out there and watching this podcast and saying, well, I can't travel to India, and obviously, you guys had a successful expo in France, and we have a business development conference that's up in Quebec next week. I can't go to that. So can you tell me, how can I get involved in learning how to do this?
Yeah, it's very easy. You can go to our website, thinklyn.com, reach out to me, either set a meeting, give me a call, shoot me a text. We have an incredible team that'll get right back to you. And we want you to join this network. It's free to join the network. We have an incredible content that we put out, and you can follow along the expo part on thinklyn.events as well. So sign up there for our newsletters. It's thinklyn.events. And like I kind of laid out earlier, is that this expo really kind of dives deep. It's a way to learn about the business development as a whole. And what Thinklyn does is we have all these strategic partnerships with, whether it's SKJ Juris, the Global Creative Center, and all our other, startups that we work with to help people along. And like I said, when you have an idea, it's not a business yet. When you're in digital development, it's not a business yet. Even when you have a product and it's packaged up perfectly, it's not a business yet. So you want to make you're in either one of these phases here, and you're trying to make it a business, and you need to get it to the market. This is something where Thinklyn can hold your hand and get you either with the right partner or partnered with us in our own creative agency to get you on the right track here. And that's what we do. We develop startups. We take them on that digital development pathway and business development pathway, and we were able to bring them to market. And ultimately, people out there, especially even if you're in just that idea stage, we understand there's so many problems and challenges on this earth that we're trying to solve, whether it's climate change, whether it's, anything we see, within the human spectrum here. We're trying to make your solution possible and develop your products and bring them to the market. That's the business we're in. We're startup for startups. And I really hope you come along, because the partnerships and the pathway has already been built out. We've proven it with multiple different brands and companies, and we really want to be able to share that with you. So come along the journey, follow us at Thinklyn, and we're happy to get in touch.
Well, Mac, listen, I really appreciate you inviting us out here to your beautiful campus. We love the morning sessions that we participate in. We have 2 more days left of this conference, and we're looking forward for the early morning sessions in the next 2 days to participate in it. And then we're looking forward to watching the football game and making sure go Eagles. That's on there. College scene is really getting real now, folks. We're getting into mid-October next week.
Conference play, big game, and also just being able to cover that, not only the game live, but college football live right now. I mean, it's in a very interesting space where we don't know what's up, we don't know what's down.
Right.
I mean, nothing's governing it. It's a wild, wild west out there. We're talking about NIL, conference realignment, the transfer portal. That story that came out a couple weeks ago with the quarterback from a local school here, a nearby school here, Holy Cross, who transferred to UNLV, won 4 games and decided to redshirt the rest of the season because it wasn't paid enough. I mean, these stories are popping up out of nowhere. It's really affecting the landscape, and it's, for some reason, we're still pretending that this is a professional league. The money is at the professional league level. These kids need to be protected. These schools need to have their interests in line, and these are student athletes, and they're young kids. And I hope there's some sort of governing body, and the adults finally start being adults and come to the table to solve some of these solutions. But again, Thinklyn's in the business of covering and solving these solutions. So I hope people with ideas come along, where we'd be happy to develop anything, whether it's in sports or climate change or anything else in the marketplace. We're excited to have you along. So,
well, listen, I got to hear this because I love the resounding. I know it sounds like we're repeating ourselves over and over again, but sometimes you have to do that to get you through all of the negativity that comes your way. Why don't you go get a job down with Aunt Joe's restaurant? Stop this. You want to hear this expression over and over and over again, because it will help you to get through those dark days. And my friend, what's the perfect way to end this?
Well, I just got to say, we only have, one shot at this, and, you have a choice whether you want to change, make a difference in a positive way on this earth. So, we're in the business of creating solutions for people, making the world a better place. And really the best way to do that, I think, is the entrepreneurial route. And so for those watching, I'd say, go start your startups.
Thank you, my friend.
Thanks, buddy.